Thank you very much, Dr. Minjuni. I don't know, can everyone hear me well?
Yes, we do.
Wonderful. Well, I'm very excited today to present to you preliminary results from my research title Unpacking the Black Box in the Relationship Between Social Support and Cognition. It's going to be a brief talk, but I'll like to first lay out the foundation for why we're going to be doing this study, then talk a little bit about some of the methods, including the data, and present some preliminary results before giving you some timeline and next steps. So as you know, cognitive impairment is a significant health problem, especially among the elderly, and it has marked impact on daily activities and independent living and quality of life. About 1 in 5 older adults aged 70 years and older in the United States, has some form of cognitive impairment, and it, these conditions are very costly and represent a substantial burden for individuals themselves, the families and societies, and are among the costliest in the U.S. Disease in the U.S. And so, as you can imagine, a lot of researchers and practitioners have tried to think about what are the ways that we could actually try to go about of intervention have been proposed, but there are some factors that we've realized also in research that have been related to basically like delaying cognitive decline, and that includes living with others, participating in neighborhood community activities, and keeping ties with contact with country of origin after immigration. So while this is sort of known in general, we don't know to what extent some of these mechanisms are operating, especially among older Latinos. And one of the reasons why we wanted to focus a little bit on Hispanics and Mexican American is that according to the Pew Research Center in 2018, roughly about 11 million immigrants living in the United States were from Mexico, accounting for about 25% of all U.S. Immigrants. And as you know, it's generally recognized that Hispanics have similar or better health than their white counterpart, non-Hispanic white counterpart in the United States, despite having low socioeconomic status. But recent studies have also suggested that there is some higher disability rates and generally poorer health than older non-Hispanics whites. And so we wanted to look a little bit at that idea of acculturation, and here we define it as, broadly as the process of adaptation and adoption of a new cultures, attitudes, values, and behaviors by an individual or a group, from a different culture. Here you can think about a culture, like being less acculturated, meaning having low acculturation, meaning having less assimilation, for example, to the Anglo culture, for example, like first generation immigrants. And so, in our literature review, we saw that, keeping ties with the country of origin, was in keeping ties with the country of origin was related to, was preventive, basically, of any types of inflammation. And so we inferred that high acculturation would probably be related to an increase in inflammation. And also other research, also studies have shown that inflammation was also related to an increase in dementia risk. All right, so we have this type of knowledge that we had going in, and so we decided to investigate it further. So, is there other mechanisms that basically underlies these pathways? Are there more mediators? And what exactly mediates this relationship? So we hypothesized that high acculturation would precipitate cognitive impairment in older adults through its effect on inflammation, depression, cigarette smoking, and cardiometabolic diseases. But again, here I'm not going to be presenting all these results for the interest of time, but I'll focus a little bit on inflammation here. So we're fortunate to have the Sacramento area Latino study on aging, abbreviated SALSA, and it's a pretty well-known cohort, about 10 years of follow-up. and about 2,000 Mexican American aged 60 years or older. And again, just talking a little bit about that idea of acculturation, we use the revised acculturation rating scale for Mexican American, and we try to follow what others have done, especially using this database. So first, they calculate the average score for the what they call the Anglo orientation scale. In example, to capture that orientation scale is: do you speak English? And rated on a scale of 0 to 4, being 0 being not at all and 4 being always. In the Mexican orientation scale, you have do you speak English? Do you enjoy speaking Spanish? Do you associate with other Latinos? And again, the participant have to rate it between 0 and 4. And then we would come back to the orientation scales and subtract the Mexican American orientation scale from the Anglo orientation scale, and then classified it as high acculturation for people who have a positive score and low acculturation for people who have a low acculturation score. And this has been done actually recently by another study that looked at this in particular. And so, in particular, we wanted to look at three mediators in one outcome in this case. And we focused on C-reactive protein, interleukin 6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. This is the causal diagram that we had hypothesized. Basically, here this means that we hypothesized that acculturation will be related causally to inflammation biomarkers, and that inflammation biomarkers would also be related to an increase in dementia risk. All three will also be affected by other factors, namely confounders such as age, sex, educational level, and income, and so forth. And this is a simplified diagram of a much larger concept, but it kind of gives us an idea of what we may need to be able to adjust in our model. All right, so just to give you a brief description of what we're intending to do. So there's one thing, there's a method called decomposition of effects. Basically, it's trying to unpack like a total effect into multiple effects, like a direct and indirect effect. And we could use different methods, one including structural equation modeling and other causal inference methods. I'm not going to bore you about the details about it, but it's something that I'm hoping to implement to be able to go into further to analyze these data. And so in our preliminary data, we were able to at least confirm some of the results that have been recently reported, I think a couple of months ago on acculturation and dementia. But just to highlight that this population, as I mentioned, is an older population, about 70 years and older was the average age, and it's about 10% in the population that had been diagnosed with dementia or cognitively impaired but not demented. And as you can see here, to my disappointment, a lot of the inflammatory biomarker, there didn't seem to be a difference, between the two groups, highly or lowly acculturated here. But luckily we have a lot of other mediators that we're going to be looking at. And so here, again, this is like a preliminary results. This is first talking about a total effect. And in subsequent steps, we will investigate further and try to unpack, which of these mediators were able to mediate this relationship. But just to give you an idea, that we found in our study that actually being highly acculturated, meaning being more assimilated to the Anglo culture, was actually protective of cognitive decline, which is something I didn't anticipate. So it was a nice finding. And I know a lot of, there was another research that, again, like I mentioned, recently came out and actually, found the same thing exactly on salsa. So it'll be interesting to see, what the mediation analysis is going to reveal. And so, as I mentioned again, there appears to be a marginal protective effect of acculturation on cognitive decline. And again, here we're not trying to, say, oh, okay, if you have a high acculturation, then you should do this or not, or trying to basically have people be more assimilated or less assimilated to the Anglo culture as an intervention, a potential intervention for reducing cognitive decline. Rather, what we want to do is to basically be able to identify those mediators to be able now to intervene. And I think, like Dr. Gerald was mentioning, one of the important things that we need to do is to understand the mechanism, and so that we can actually identify the potential intervention targets for implementing and reducing cognitive decline where we find it. And so what we're hoping to do is, the next steps is to complete first the mediation analysis, looking at all the biomarker, the inflammatory biomarkers, and look at other mediators as well as other exposures. Among them, we wanted to look at especially, for example, what does that mean when you keep, there's a question that we're asking, how often do you speak with family members, overseas in Latin America? And we're going to be looking at how these exposures, including living with family, like spouse, children, family members, how do those variables and factors tend to explain like cognitive impairment risk? And we're going to be looking at a whole variety of mediators, like depressive symptoms, cardiometabolic disease, and other inflammatory biomarkers. And so I just wanted to thank you again for your attention. And please let me know if you have any questions. I welcome suggestions. And especially want to thank all my mentors, Dr. Duro and Dr. Ritz, for providing insight all throughout this project. And I'm looking forward to completing the research as we move along. But thank you again for your attention.